this is Dana and welcome back to the Orchid Hut. Today's video is going to be about springtime, perfect time of year. Birds are singing and orchids, in my case, are going back out to the Orchid Hut and onto my patio. And I wanted to talk a little bit in today's video about how you know when is the right time to put your orchids that have been wintering indoors back outside. How do you know when the time is really right? And things to be careful of when you first put your wintering indoor orchids back outside, and then things to consider when you're doing that. And in my case, a few orchids that I'll mention that are ready to be repotted this time of the year. So before I get started with all of those springtime updates, I wanted to give everyone a little bit of a personal update and how it's affected my orchids. In my last video, I mentioned that my mom had passed at the end of February, and it was an extremely difficult final year of life for her. The last 3 months were even harder, and the last 10 days were almost unbearable. So some of my orchids and my life, in general, has been rather neglected. Hopefully I'll be able to get back on track with some more orchid videos as time moves on, but even after a close family member's death, there's a ton of work, ton of paperwork, probate type things in the court and transferring of accounts and paperwork that's just unbelievable. So the work doesn't end even in your time of grief, and you have to figure out how to carry on. My mom was on hospice for the last 3 months of her life. One of the things that I read, and I'm sure if some of you have been through something similar, they say when you have a close family member go on hospice, you just need to be prepared to give up your life. And that's pretty much what happened to me the last year, especially the last 3 months. And then, the final couple of weeks was just all consuming. So hopefully going to be able to get back on track with more orchid videos here as time moves on. One of the things that I've been doing to kind of decompress is go bird watching. My husband and I both love to do that. There are many great hiking trails and drives to take not too far from our house where we like to bird watch, and springtime is a great time of year to do that because migration comes through the Texas Gulf Coast. And I'll insert a picture here. This was one of the very peaceful scenes along one of our bird watching drives the other day. Just an open pasture with yellow wildflowers and cows grazing. And I stopped and jumped out of the car and just took a picture with my iPhone because it was such a peaceful landscape. And as the orchids have been moving outside for me, I've been doing it in a very slow fashion this year. Last year, I just took all the orchids on the inside, and in one day, one fell swoop, they were just all back outside, and that was that. This year, I've taken it a bit more slowly, and I think I like this approach better. I am assessing each orchid before I put it back outside. Does it need to be tidied? Does it need to have old bloom spikes cut away? Does it need to have dead leaves removed? Does it need to have a little bit of bark, added to the top of the pot because the orchid has settled? And so, I'm assessing each one, and then I'm also taking note of which ones will need to be repotted sooner rather than later. So about half my orchids right now are back outside along the shelf and on the hanging wires around the Orchid Hut. I'll insert a little video clip here. This is about half of them, and you can see that they're in the dappled sunlight of springtime, and all of the ones that I have put back outside so far are, or seem to be at least, extremely happy so far. Now, one of the things that I wanted to mention in this video, since it's springtime, you know, and everybody lives in a bit of a different locale, a bit of a different environment, a different place in the country, or maybe not even in the United States. But one of the things that I watch for in order to determine when to put my wintering indoor orchids back outside is I kind of, first of all, I look at a 10-day forecast and I make sure that none of the temperatures are going to drop below 50 degrees. That's kind of the cutoff point in my mind where, you know, it just begins to get too cold for orchids to be outside. So if it's going to drop to the low 50s just for a brief period, you know, in the early morning or something, that's fine. But I really don't want to put orchids back out if I see an upcoming forecast of lower temperatures than 50 degrees Fahrenheit. The other thing that I watch, and I think everybody would have something like this in their area that they could notice, but I'll mention what happens in Southeast Texas anyway, and then you can, you know, kind of apply it to where you live. In this area, there are certain native trees, you know, trees that have, you know, been growing in the area for 50, 75, 100 years. And in particular, in Southeast Texas, it's the native pecan trees that I watch. Now, you might think that I'm kind of in the piney forest area, but I'm not. The Houston area is right on the fringes of the piney forest, kind of like on the north and east sides of Houston. But I'm a bit further south, and I'm really not technically in the piney forest area, so I can't go by the pine trees. But the native pecan trees in this area are the trees to watch for, I guess you could almost say, spring safety. You know, when is it safely into spring as far as temperatures go? And I'll show you just some pictures in my neighborhood, because my neighborhood was a forested area near a river before it was turned into housing development. And they did a pretty good job of maintaining as many of the old native trees as they possibly could. And a lot of people have those trees in their yard. And then, of course, as houses were built, you know, landscaping plants were kind of filled in and different trees were planted and whatnot. But if you just walk down my street, you can pick out the very, very old native pecan trees. And they are absolutely the last trees to decide to put on new leaves and blooms at the very beginning of spring. It's like they know. It's like they have the best internal clock for knowing when it's completely safe to put on new growth. And you can see in the pictures just from my neighborhood, all of the other landscaped plants and trees and whatnot have been green a long time, a month or more. But the native pecan trees wait, and they are just now, they look bare, maybe still in my photos, but just now they are beginning to put on the new growth, and you can see that they are yards taller than the surrounding landscaping that was planted because they are such old trees. When I see the pecan trees in this area begin to do that, I know that the temperatures are safe to put my orchids back outside. Now, in your area, it's probably, you know, not the native pecan tree, but you probably do have native species of either trees or shrubs that give a signal in spring when temperatures are safe. So look for what that tree or shrub is in your area, and, you know, see if you can sort of draw the same conclusions that I have for my area. Now, when you put your orchids back outside, a couple of things to be careful of, and I've already noticed this myself. Nighttime temperatures still can get a bit cool, so it would probably be a good idea not to have them too wet. You do have to be very, very careful of not having them in direct sun, especially if they've been indoors. I have found that because the sun is still somewhat low in the sky, I do have to put up my shade cloth on some bright sunny days, because there's 2 or 3 hours of direct sun, because it's still low in the sky, that might be a bit too hot for orchids just coming back outside. So I am having to be a little bit careful to make sure I'm providing dappled shade at all times, on sunny days especially. And, just be careful with the wetness. If it's very, very cool in the morning, you might want to hold off on watering. You might not want to water quite as frequently as what you have to when it gets to be warmer summer months. Okay, and then repot time. Now, I have dozens, I think, of Phalaenopsis repots on my channel. But if you're looking at Phalaenopsis orchids like, and some of mine are still in bloom, by the way, gorgeous blooms, probably best to wait to repot, after the blooms begin to fade. That might be another month or so. But an orchid like this that did not bloom this year, this one is desperate for a repot. It's a bit dehydrated. It's got all kinds of air roots sticking out. This media down in the pot is just old. This one is definitely due for a repot, and I will be doing that shortly. I may not actually make videos for all of the Phalaenopsis repots. There are dozens of them on my channel. One in particular is named the Ultimate Phalaenopsis Repot, and I'll put a link to that one in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. All of the details about repotting a Phalaenopsis. And then this one is also due for a repot. However, it's got kind of a funky bloom spike going on here. Several of the buds blasted, no idea. Looks like maybe some on the very tip are not even going to develop. Maybe these two will open. This is my only mostly solid yellow Phalaenopsis, and it's definitely due for a repot as well. The stem, is rather tall with all these air roots at the bottom. Media is rather old, so this one needs a little bit of attention. So I will be doing numerous Phalaenopsis repots. I also have a Vanda still in a plastic basket that I'm going to be repotting, and I'll be sure to video this one. I'm going to be repotting it in a little wire basket with some large bark chips. So I'll be sure to film that one. It should be interesting if I can get that to work out. And then I have a huge Grammatophyllum that needs to be in a larger pot. So I'll try to film that one outdoors. And I would like to end this video today with this gorgeous Phalaenopsis bloom. I do appreciate you taking the time today to watch this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. The subscribe button will be coming up in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And don't forget that notifications bell, because that lets you know when I've posted something new. All right, hope to talk to you all again sooner rather than later. Thanks for watching.